So, right before my last video on Horsey, I made a community post, sort of, as a sneak peek, look what's coming type thing. And on the comments of that community post, this happened. Look at that. Public bribery. Disgusting. So, anyways, on a totally unrelated note, I'm using Ditto in Regulation J today. This is the same guy I mentioned at the end of last video, by the way. The rules are the same as the Horsey video. Build a team around Ditto and bring Ditto to every match. Now Ditto is a weird Pokemon since its strength depends entirely on the opponent's team, so building around it isn't really possible, which is why I'll discuss it at the end of the team section, as in order to understand Ditto, you have to understand the Pokemon surrounding it. And the format we'll be playing in this video, Regulation J, is a dual restricted format, so obviously we need to start with those guys. And since this video is about using my friend's favorite Pokemon, I thought it'd be fitting to use his favorite restricted, Kyogre. Kyogre is the strongest rain setter that Pokemon has ever seen. Choice Specs Water Spout in the rain deletes basically the entire meta. Origin Pulse is a backup water stab when we are at low HP, and Ice Beam and Thunder are good coverage moves. And Terra Electric is here to patch up its Miraidon weakness. Aside from Miraidon though, Kyogre's biggest weakness is its speed stat, as it leaves it vulnerable to get outsped and reduce the power of Water Spout. So to patch up this weakness and to provide more utility, I go with Tornadus Incarnate. The combination of Prankster and Tailwind allows Kyogre to outrun basically every single restricted Pokemon. Taunt is good into annoying support Pokemon, Rain Dance gives me an advantage in the Weather War, and Bleak Wind Storm is a strong damaging option that gets help with the rain. Focus Sash lets me invest entirely into its offenses, and Terra Dark is good against opposing Prankster Pokemon. Next up, Rillaboom. Terrains are running everywhere in Regulation J, so Rillaboom provides a valuable counter to those Pokemon while also giving me passive recovery. Grassy Glide is a very strong priority move, Fake Out is an incredibly useful utility tool, Wood Hammer hits really hard inside the grass, and U-Turn allows me to get Ditto on field safely. I give it a fair bit of speed investment to have a fast Fake Out and put the rest into bulk and offense. The item of choice is the Assault Vest, to make it harder to remove, and a defensive Terra of Fire for the same purpose. Now, at this point, I'm kind of scared of Trick Room teams, as I don't have very consistent ways of dealing with them, plus I don't have many Amoonguss answers. So for the next slot on my team, I go with Clefairy. After You, combined with its low speed stat, allows me to maintain the speed advantage even inside Trick Room. Follow Me is useful for directing priority moves away from Kyogre, and combining it with Terra Grass allows it to keep my entire team safe from Amoonguss. Helping Hand lets it contribute damage, and Protect is Protect. And finally, Eviolite and Friend are basically mandatory. At this point, my team needs more offense, since Kyogre is my only real attacker. And I also want a Pokemon that can handle the common restricteds that my team doesn't have answers for, namely the Calyrexes. So, for this spot, I go with my second restricted Pokemon, Zacian Crowned. Its ability Intrepid Sword allows it to get rolling without needing much setup. I train it with enough special defense to let it live 2 Astral Barrages and put the rest into attack and speed. Crunch will always KO Shadow Rider Calyrex and gives me a strong move to smack Lunala with. Behemoth Blade is my best tool to hit Ice Rider, and it's amazing into the many Fairy Terras running around. I round the moveset off with Play Rough and Protect and give it a Terra type of Water for defense. Finally, we've made it to the star of the show, Ditto. It's running Choice Scarf and Imposter, but you probably already figured that out. Instead, I'll be discussing the role that Ditto fills on the team. It is my dedicated Zamazenta counter. Currently, my team has decent answers to a majority of the restricted Pokemon, and even if they don't, Rain Boosted Water Spout usually handles things just fine. But not Zamazenta. This thing walls my entire team, and with Body Press, it hits quite hard as well. But that's where Ditto comes in. You see, when Ditto transforms into Zamazenta, it copies its defense boost, and then gains another defense boost thanks to Dauntless Shield. Meaning, Ditto has a higher defense stat and stronger body presses than the opponent. Now, Ditto's HP stat is a lot lower than Zam's, so effectively they trade even. However, that's what the Terra type is for. By running Terra Ghost on Ditto, I'm able to get a major advantage against the opponent. Terra Ghost also has the additional benefits of being useful against Fake Out and Extreme Killer Arceus sets. Is it a reliable answer to Zamazenta? No, not really. But that's just Ditto in a nutshell, and I think it's a fitting role for it. Now, on to the games. Game 1 is against the Calyrex Ice Trick Room team. The game starts off with Zacian and Tornadus on my side versus Indeedee and Ice Rider on theirs, and I'm immediately at a disadvantage. If my opponent goes for Follow Me in Trick Room, I can't stop it, thanks to Psychic Terrain making Tornadus useless. So I need an alternate plan. I bring in Rillaboom, hoping to replace the terrain and to have Fake Out pressure active, and I taunt the Indeedee to stop it from doing anything problematic. The turn plays out, and for some reason my opponent doesn't go for Follow Me, instead protecting their Ice Rider, and taunt stops Indeedee from using Trick Room, so I guess I was worried for nothing. Tornadus is able to stall for a bit, giving me an opportunity to KO the Ice Rider, and the board becomes Zacian and Ditto on my side versus Indeedee and Volcanion on theirs. After predicting that they'd go for a Trick Room, I double the Indeedee as Volcanion wastes his Protect. Ditto then takes care of Torkoal within a few turns, and now I'm up 3 against 1 versus Volcanion. However, the game is far from over. Currently, Ditto is locked in a Steam Eruption, which is completely useless due to Water Absorb, so I need to reposition it. However, both my remaining Pokemon are weak to fire, and the sun is still up. I'm able to use Fake Out to get Ditto out safely, and Zacian and Rillaboom do a good amount of chip to Volcanion before going down. This is it. I know my Ditto is faster, but I can only hit the Volcanion with resisted attacks. Volcanion is sitting at 40% health, but it's a pretty bulky Pokemon, and thanks to Ditto's low HP, I don't feel comfortable with my 24%. It all comes down to this final turn, and Ditto lands a critical hit, taking out the Volcanion and winning me an absolute nail-biter of a match. That game was way closer than it should have been. Both me and my opponent made pretty big mistakes, and I should have brought Clefairy, but Ditto is clutch, so we're fine. On to game 2. It's Clefairy and Zacian on my side versus Mamoswine and Raging Bolt on theirs. Zacian is immediately under threat from a ground-type attack, so I use Follow Me to protect it while trying to KO the Raging Bolt. My opponent surprises me, however, terastallizing their Bolt to Bug and going for a Discharge plus Earthquake combo, completely wasting my Follow Me. It brings both my Pokemon down to red HP and paralyzes my Zacian, so we're suddenly very far behind. I protect Clefairy and bring in Ditto, stealing their Mamoswine. Next turn I try to KO the Bolt with a Rock Slide, however it misses, and Clefairy ends up going down. Kyogre now switches in, and I'm forced to Terastallize. Ditto handles Bolt, and the board becomes Kyogre and Ditto on my side versus Arceus and Mamoswine on theirs. And things don't look good. Arceus most definitely moves before Kyogre, and if it deals enough damage to my whale, we may not have enough juice left to win the game. Things look grim. However, in a stroke of incredible luck, Ditto moves before Arceus and flinches it with a Rock Slide, allowing Kyogre to grab a double KO, and brings me back into the game. Now, a Terapagos that can't Terastallize has no way of bringing the game back, and I win 3 Pokemon to 0. Ditto really is clutch. Game 3. The leads are Rillaboom and Zacian on my side versus Miraidon and Whimsicott on theirs. And thanks to the monkey, Miraidon isn't at full power yet. Turn 1 we make a trade with me KOing Whims as they set up Tailwind. My opponent played well though, and they're able to get Miraidon back on field at full power in a single turn. So I decide to take advantage of the situation and use U-turn to bring in Ditto. Now we're in a mirror, but they have the speed advantage. So I make a risky play by Terastallizing Ditto to live a play rough and Volt switching the Zacian. My own Zacian barely survives an Electro Drift and KOs the Miraidon. Those special defense points are coming in clutch. Rillaboom hits the field again, and Fake Out pressure is now active. I try to KO the opposing Zacian, however, make a miscalculation, and Urshifu is able to KO my Zacian before I can attack. But fear not, thanks to Ditto, Zacian is back, ironically as a Ghost type this time, and I'm able to KO Urshifu with it. Their Zacian does good damage, however it can't deal with Kyogre quick enough, and I win 2 Pokemon to 0. And finally, on to game 4. Feeling ballsy, I lead Ditto, predicting them to send out one of their restricteds right across it. With Arceus' blessings, I'm able to get it right, and Ditto becomes Lunala. The opposing Lunala feels pressure to Terastallize, and I'm able to taunt it, stopping Trick Room from going up. Incineroar now switches in, and since my Shadow Shield is broken, I decide to get Ditto out of there. However, both of us end up switching in our Rillabooms. I'm able to use my fast Fake Out to let Tornadus chunk the opposing monkey for a good bit, as Lunala chunks my own. We mirror each other's moves for a third time, switching Rillaboom out to Incineroar and Kyogre. However, my additional speed investment comes back to bite me, as Lunala deals heavy damage to my Kyogre on the switch. A few turns later, the board becomes Tornadus and Kyogre on my side versus Incineroar and Koraidon on theirs. And normally, you'd expect me to use Tornadus to remove the sun, but that's not actually what I want. You see, currently, a lot of their team has sustained heavy damage, so if I'm able to use Ditto to steal their Koraidon, they may not be able to stop it. Thus, my objective is instead to KO the Incineroar to stop Intimidate while intentionally having my Kyogre faint. The turn plays out and Incineroar barely survives an Origin Pulse as Koraidon protects, making my Tailwind play basically useless. However, Incineroar still KOs Kyogre, and things are in position. In fact, after I switch in Ditto, they aren't able to stop their own Koraidon's rampage, and I win 3 Pokemon to 0. Alright, so that's that. Honestly, this challenge was, in a way, the hardest one I've done so far. Not because the team was bad or anything, no, quite the opposite actually, but because collecting footage for it was the trickiest. Ditto is by no means a Pokemon you should bring to every game, so that was annoying. Also, I just suck at using Ditto, so finding matches where it actually contributed was not easy. In fact, I had to edit down 3 hours of gameplay into just 4 matches. But yeah, aside from that, I'm pretty happy with myself, and I'm actually very proud of the team I created. Because unlike my previous teams, every member felt like they had a purpose, right? Like, even though Clefairy didn't do much in the games I showed, it was still very useful in the rest of the 3 hours, especially after realizing that it was a very good lead into Trick Room teams. Zacian also surprised me a lot on how good it was. Originally, I was going to use Keldeo as my second restricted Pokemon, however, its role overlapped with Kyogre too much, and I also just hate relying on Muddy Water, so I switched it out. Unfortunately, the Ditto and Zamazenta thing never ended up coming up since people are just not using Zamazenta for some reason, so that was unfortunate, but all in all, I'm pretty satisfied. As always, let me know how you'd improve the team, and I'll see you next time. Bye.